So JJ, show us what somebody buying this book is going to actually experience.
Well, you get a black slipcase that has a seal on it, which you break, and the book comes out. And the book looks like a 1949 library book.
It's even got a library sticker.
It does, the Dewey Decimal System in full display. And when you open the book, you discover that there are pages, every page almost has writings in the margins in different color inks, and you realize that there are two people who are having a conversation, a play in a way that exists on top of this book, referencing each other and their lives. And in fact, there are things that can't be said in the margins of the book, so there are things like letters that go into more detail about these people. There are postcards that have very specific reasons for being in here and referencing certain things. There's a page from a college newspaper that talks about a flood that happened there and all sorts of things, including one of my favorite pieces, which is this map that's on a napkin from the cafe college. But anyway, it's sort of a brilliantly put together thing. And the truth is, when we were working with Little Brown and Canongate and trying to figure out how to make this work, Melcher Media, who was the company that helped us physically put it together, kept promising us that it would look legitimate and it would feel real. And I kept feeling like, can they do this? Like, is it actually possible to do it? And when we got our first copy of this thing, my jaw slammed to the ground, and I couldn't believe that they actually pulled it off.
The amount of attention that a book like this demands. You have so many different things going on. You have the actual text of a book, you have the commentary on the book, which is like a sort of wonderful play, a conversation in which you're learning about these characters at different points in their lives. You've got all the objects. People talk about the Twitter generation as having no attention span, as everything existing in these 140 character chunks. And you've made something that demands attention. Do you think there's something faintly counterintuitive about that at this point?
Possibly. I mean, it seems to me like it might be an oversimplification to talk, or it just might be a received truth that our attention spans are fragmented. I don't know actually how true that is.
We get to your point? I'm kidding.
So JJ, everything you've done to date that people know you for is first of all on the small screen and then on the large screen. How does it feel to have no screen?
It's been maybe the most wonderful and sort of joyous collaboration. Partly because there's so many fewer moving pieces. There's no army to produce this thing. It was Doug and Lindsay Weber and myself, and then the great people at the publishing company. But I will say that it's funny. Someone asked me the other day, this book, why didn't you do it as an interactive book, on a screen? And I said, well, we did do it as an interactive book. It's just analog. And so I think that the relationship between what I'm used to doing, developing stories with storytellers, for film or TV, actually was fairly close to this. But the process of making it was a much more intimate and far less political collaboration, which made it that much more wonderful.
Could you imagine a world in which you could actually make this into a movie or something?
No, I mean, I think that this is the form that it's meant to be, and there was no goal to do this first in order to make a movie. But it would be a fun thing to, find some way to. There's so many wonderful things that I think went into the making of this thing, and again, I hope when people get it and hold it and see what was done, that they are intrigued to read it, because it's not just that it looks beautiful or that there are these cool things that are put between the pages, but it's the beautiful words that Doug's written.
When a meteor struck in Russia earlier this year, people commented that it looked like something from a JJ Abrams film. Do you feel visual effects in films have reached some kind of realism limit at this point?
I think I've been discussing this a lot with friends lately, the notion that we can do anything now, photorealistically, and what that means. Looking at design, not just design in movies, but design in product design. What computers have done is, I think, done a lot of things, but one of the things it's done is provided specific tools that I think are just, there's such a facility now to do certain things that you can now do anything. I think, there's a certain kind of homogenization of design, and in fact, if you look at movies, and I'm as guilty as anyone, you start to see a kind of almost kaleidoscopic effect of visual effects where you don't even know where to look. There's so much that's happening because you can do that now. And it used to be there was sort of one focus and one thing. And in fact, if you look at old films and the visual effects that, like matte paintings, glass matte paintings, like Albert Whitlock, an amazing matte painter, he would paint with some great detail in the center of the frame where the focus was. And as you got to the periphery, you'd realize that they were becoming much more loose, the brush strokes, and you wouldn't really focus, because he knew that's not where you were looking. Now, you are able to do, with incredible photorealism, unbelievable detail, and sort of like Transformers, and you see, there are 10,000 things moving in any one frame at any one time, and you're sort of overwhelmed by it. The question becomes, what do you do with it? And is it really the best possible thing that we can do anything? What do you do now with the unlimited power of visual effects? And I think it's almost like with sound. Before there was sound, there was an incredible efficiency of dialogue, because you knew there were going to be cards that were going to come up in silent films, and so you had characters saying things that were essential. Once there was sound, you could be a little bit looser, and there are now, there have been many, many films that have used sound, and you wonder sometimes, does everything need to be said that is said? So I think that there is we're sort of past this kind of moment of, hoping, we can do things visually in movies. We can do anything now. And the essential question now is, what is essential?
The book. People are predicting the death of the book, the end of the book, the idea that all books are going to become electronic, and they're predicting the end of libraries. And you've created something that has to be a book, and it's set in a library. What do books and libraries mean to the two of you?
I mean, they were a huge, huge part of my life growing up. I mean, I had my head in a book for the better part of, I don't even remember ages 5 through 15. I was just in the books. And libraries are a place where the book is sacred and things are quiet, and you can go, you can sit down with a book and believe, you can sense that what you're doing is important. I would hate for that to be lost.
Yeah, and for me, I grew up in a house where there were always books, and whether it was children's books or books my parents were reading, and I obviously in school I read a lot, but the truth is that I was much more of a TV kid. So for me, Rod Serling was where my head was. While you were in the library reading books, my mind was being blown by the Twilight Zone. It was my obsession. But I do feel like for some reason the analog object, there's such incredible comfort in a book, in a physical book. And I have read books on a tablet, and it's fine. But it doesn't compare for me. And for some reason, even when we were building our production company building, I called the building the National Typewriter Company building. We have a letterpress, a Chandler and Price letterpress in the art room that we use all the time. There's something about the analog experience, not just in creation, in writing or printing, but in reading. And I know it sounds silly, but there's just something about holding the book and being able to sort of see how far you've gone, and sort of the bookmark, or if you dog-eared page. There's something about the experience of holding the book that is so comforting. And I think in an increasingly digital world, there's huge value in the tactile and the analog, and that's something that S, I think, celebrates.
And let's not forget the smell either. New books have a smell, old books have a smell.
That's true.
And they're both wonderful.
I was actually genuinely missing the old book smell. I thought this is the one thing they haven't reproduced, is that great old book smell that this book ought to have.
I've actually gotten emails from a couple of friends.
Swear it's there.
Yeah, who swear it's, and ask me how did they do this?
Somewhere there's like an aerosol can that says must on it.
It's vanillin. As old pages break down, they release vanillins. Do you draw a distinction between high art and low art? And if you do, where would you put this book?
Can I jump in with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's the thing. I love the experience of going to the cinema and seeing a film that is rousing, that gets the audience in a communal experience of screaming, of applauding, of laughing. And I know that there are so many people who say, well, that's a movie, it's a lowbrow, form. There's nothing higher for me in the realm of art than a communal experience that makes you feel something. And so I'm an unabashed embracer of whatever it is that makes people feel something. And I do see that this book, S, has an absolute gimmick, front and center. It's a huge gimmick. And I would say if it hadn't been written with the kind of care and thoughtfulness and skill that Doug brings to his work, it would have just been a gimmick. But to me, my favorite experiences have been stories that are at their core gimmicks done so well that the gimmick disappears and it becomes this essential, wonderful thing. And I've seen it in the work of so many people I admire, including yourself, where you think, well, this is the thing, this is that sort of, but in lesser hands, it's transparent. You can see right through it. You just know what it is. It doesn't have any sort of a heft or import. But I think done well, it can be both. And so what I would like to think is this sits right on the fence, where it is something that is neither high or low, but it is this kind of amalgam, this cocktail of an idea that is sort of quick to understand, but an experience that is, I think, rich and deep, and that's all thanks to Doug.
And I think early on, I was aware of the possible tension between high and low, or literary. I don't want to say literary and genre, because that's actually not the distinction that I'm trying to draw, but I don't know what is, so I'll use that. But I think I also realized pretty early on that worrying about it was not going to help me in any way as I was writing. So I thought the only way to approach it is take this story, which has a tremendous amount of fun built into it and has some genre elements built into it, and just write it the best I can and not worry about where it will end up residing on that spectrum.
JJ, you mentioned big popular films that everybody loves. We hear rumors that there may be British casting of Star Wars. Is this true?
Well, it wouldn't be Star Wars if there wasn't some fantastic actors who happen to be British. But I think we're doing our job and looking everywhere for the best possible actors for the roles. I mean, nothing is more important. There are things as important, but nothing is more important than casting a movie great. And I've been incredibly lucky to be involved in projects that we've had wonderful casts and wonderful casting directors to make it happen. But the last thing you want to do is, when you're collaborating on something, is work with people that you have to do their job for them and kind of give them notes every way. You want people who inspire you and elevate it.